Hi everyone, I'm Amy and I'm from Chaucer and the Hart. Thank you for joining me for another Folklore Thursday. Today I've got a tale for you from the late Middle Ages. Hertford, or as they would say in the Old Saxon, Hereford. I'm never going to say that right, so never mind. I'm not going to give too much away about this time of history because we cover it in our Heritage Story Walk, which you can find more information about on our website, which is in the description box below. So that is actually going to be taking place in Hertford itself, but it covers local legends from across Hertfordshire. Because yeah, we as you saw in hopefully you saw in our last announcement video, due to live and outdoor events taking place, we can now come away from our computer screens and actually see you in person from a 2 meter distance, though, obviously. So yes, find all the information for tickets you can get below. Due to social distancing, we can only have 10 people in our slots, so make sure you book quickly so you can get your place on that. We are still supporting the Trussell Trust with our lockdown storytelling videos, which you can find a link above me to give you a bit more information about what they do. You can make a single donation because of the impact of coronavirus. As more and more people face unemployment, people are going to need their help more than ever. So anything you can give would be amazing, rather than leaving us a tip for our stories if you like what you've heard today. Obviously, if you're facing hardship yourself, you can still help by sharing this video and the link far and wide. So our story is called Death is Strongest. It's been about 700 years now since the 100 Years' War, and it was the first war to be fought by real people, not knights. Knights were known for being noble, for being chivalrous, but these people, were called peasants from time to time. These were rough and ready, good and bad people. In this time I'm telling you of, people were tough, they were hardy, for they were living in harsh times. Your brother, your father, and his father before him even, all would have been soldiers. The Black Death had also carried away about 25 million people. In Hertfordshire, the population went down between 30 to 50%, and loads of settlements just became abandoned. But those who survived, they thrived. A lot of the Hertfordshire people were involved in the Peasants' Revolt of 1381. So with ordinary people being able to fight in wars and demand better working conditions, it meant that some people were a bit unscrupulous in how they did this. None more so than the three men of this story. There were two brothers called Fisk and Lark and their cousin Rob. These men were thieves. These men weren't clever enough to forge coins or to burgle, and their fingers were not deft enough to lift purses, nor pick locks or come up with clever schemes. No. These men saw what they liked and they took it. They were well armed and they were strong and ready to take on anybody. One morning they were in the pub and the two brothers, Fisk and Lark, they were arm wrestling at the table and just being generally offensive to all around them. The two brothers pushed and they punched one another. Drinkers became jostled and the table tipped over and ale was scattered all over the floor as Fisk pinned Lark to the wall by the throat. I am the best in the land. What am I? You are the strongest, brother. Let me go. Remember it well, Fisk said, letting him go. I'm stronger than all others. And who are the strongest mob in the land? We are. Death is stronger than any of you, piped up a small voice. Fisk looked around. Who said that? I did. The sound came from a small 5-year-old girl who was half wrapped up in her mother's skirts. One of her hazel eyes looked straight at the men. Fisk looked down at her. Little speck, how would you know how strong death is anyway? Last month, death came and took my 2 uncles and my father in just one day. Now my uncles, they were enormous, and my dad was no weakling. But all died when death came, so he must be the strongest of all. Fisk laughed. I've seen statues of your Mr. Death in churchyards. He's nothing more than a bag of bones. No muscles on him at all. I could beat him with one arm tied behind my back. Any of us 3 could, blindfolded and all. Where is this Death? The girl's mother spoke. He is here, in the town, and abroad in the country. He is everywhere. Ah, Fisk said, that'll just make him easier to find. Come on, lads, our muscles could do with a little stretch. Let's have him. Now the 3 went into the town to ask anyone they spotted where they could find Death. At the very mention of Death, some ran away. Others would pretend that they simply hadn't heard the question before moving on. Those that dared to answer stuttered that Death had taken friends and family, but had moved on since. By the time the sun was high in the sky, the 3 men strode into the countryside, where they were surrounded by unploughed fields, starving cows, and broken down farms, until they came upon a dark wood with a narrow path running through it. The 3 men, not being afraid of anything, followed that path until they stopped dead as they heard a cry. Death! 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 The 3 men readied themselves, either taking their blades from their belts or readying their fists. And the cry came again, louder. Death! 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 Rob was so jittery that he tripped over a fallen tree branch. As out of the shadows came an old man. He had hardly any hair. His thin body was covered with rags, and he walked on dirty, bare feet, and he had a long, scraggly beard. Lark cried out impatiently. What are you shouting about? If you've seen Death, you tell us where he is, as we want to find him, and we're here to show him who's strongest. The old man looked at the 3 men, bewildered, either unable to or unwilling to answer, which the 3 men were unsatisfied with, and so they began to beat him, kicking him on the path until the man cried out desperately. I am just a hermit. Please, I pray you, no more. I'll tell you where he can be found. Fisk said, You better tell us the truth. Where is Mr. Death today? He rests in a cave, the old man said. Under a hill yonder. Follow the path and keep to the left. A cave will appear before you. But, sirs, I beg you do not enter. Disaster awaits you. You will all die. Die, I tell you. Pfft. Fisk kicked him once more for good measure. Listen here, you worm. We fought Frenchmen, Dutchmen and sailors. We fought 4 big farmers and stole their cattle and their daughters. Yeah, we're not afraid, Lark said. We're not afraid of a bunch of old bones. Come on, lads. And so the 3 men continued to follow the path to the left, as they were told. As they followed the path, Lark took out his blade and whetstone from his pouch, and he began to sharpen it along the way. Rob looked along the floor of the wood, finding a branch which would do very well for a club. Fisk punched a few trees along the way to give him a little bit of practice. Soon they arrived at the cave, and it was dark and silent. Fisk called out, Mr. Death, Mr. Death, yoo-hoo, we want a word with you. come out here and join us. But no sound came. We hear you're strong, maybe strongest of all. Show us your big muscles, eh? We've seen your picture, goaded Lark. You're nothing but a big bag of old bones. No sound was heard. Not even bird song could be heard in this corner of the woods. The three men bent under the shallow opening of the cave and went inside. As their eyes got used to the darkness, there was something shining, glinting in the darkness, and they gasped. They could not believe their eyes. There was a pile of gold coins, goblets, and plates and other treasures all before them. Hey, Lark said. No wonder the old man wanted us to keep away. He wanted to keep his fortune. Or rather, our fortune, Rob said. Now it is real gold, isn't it? I'm not just seeing things. Lark stepped forward, picked up one of the coins, and took it towards the light of the cave entrance, and he bit into it, looked upon it. There were no dents in the metal. It's real gold, all right, boys. How many coins do you think are here, Fisk? 2,000, 3,000 pieces? Hey, it's enough of a share for all three of us. And the three men began to ponder what they would do with each of their share. Fisk decided that he would buy himself a ship and take to the high seas as a pirate. No more robbing the poor. It was now time for him to rob the rich. Lark decided that he would build his own castle with a moat and a drawbridge and an army of guards so no one could enter. Go on, Rob. What will you do with yours? Rob thought about it for a minute. He decided that for his share, he would like to buy his own land. There was enough of it to go round that had been abandoned. He would build his own house upon it. He would buy a cow, maybe, a pig, some sheep, maybe a duck on a duck pond, and a cosy, warm bed that he would sleep in for the rest of his days. Ha, 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 laughed the other two. You big softy, they called out. Here, Fisk said, how shall we divide it? Lark, you're good at counting. The only sure way is to each take one coin in turn. Oh, that'll take hours, Fisk said, and I'm starving and thirsty. And we cannot leave these piles unguarded. Thieves like us will be bound to take it. Rob, here, take these coppers and bring us wine, bread and meat. We two brothers, we'll stay here and guard the loot. Off you go. And so reluctantly, Rob left the other two and followed the narrow path through the wood and the countryside and back into town. Lark and Fisk looked at each other, giggling to themselves at the pile of gold. And they looked at the gold a bit closer, back at each other, then back at the gold again. They looked upon each of the three piles in turn, and then they looked at each other again, and then they piled the gold from 3 into 2. Looks better as 2 piles rather than 3, doesn't it? Yeah, Lark said. And both men took out their whetstones and their blades, and they sharpened them. Meanwhile, back in the town, Rob had bought some meat and some bread and wine. But he also made a little visit to the apothecary, where he bought a small vial of poison, deadly poison, so pungent, so strong, that a few drops could have taken down a whole army. And he took this vial and the bottle of wine and he poured it straight in. I'll show you who's soft, he said. Now Rob was feeling quite pleased with himself as he reached the cave entrance and called out, "Lads, we have here some fine fare to share." Lads? Lads? Lark and Fisk, blades at the ready, were hiding either side of the cave's entrance as Rob made his way inside, placing down the material which had the bread and meat inside and the wine bottle near the piles of gold. He blinked. "Lads!" When all of a sudden the two men struck. They attacked Rob full on, beating him to the ground, taking their blades and plunging them in, out, until Rob's cries were heard no more, and his body was limp and bloody on the ground. Feeling quite pleased with themselves, the two men took their blades and wiped the blood of their cousin off on their jerkins, and then proceeded to open the material and help themselves to the bread and the meat hungrily. And it was then that Lark took the bottle of wine and 2 goblets from the pile of riches, and he poured a share for him and a share for Fisk. "To the dearly departed," the two men clinked their goblets together, and the two men drank deep from the poisoned wine to their dearly departed cousin and to their slightly larger fortune. In this way, death was and always will be strongest. So that was the rather grisly tale of Death is Strongest. I hope you enjoyed it today. If you liked this video, give it a thumbs up, share it with your friends, subscribe to our YouTube channel if you haven't done so already. Our lockdown storytelling playlist has got a wide variety of stories to keep you entertained, not just for during the time of Corona, but for beyond. We'll be doing our last lockdown storytelling next Thursday, the 27th of August, but that won't be the end of virtual storytelling, I'm sure. We've enjoyed bringing this to you every week. Andy and I are going to look at bringing some more stories to you through the means of this channel, so don't think just because lockdown storytelling's coming to an end for now, it doesn't mean that we won't be doing things virtually in the future. As I said before, we have got an event coming out in September on the 19th, the 21st and 22nd, our Heritage Story Walk, our first live event of the year. So we really hope that if you're local to Hertford, or even if you're not local, if you fancy journeying to visit us, that would also be great. It would be fantastic to see you. So do look at our website for details about how to book. Do stay safe out there wherever you are, and take care, and we'll see you next week. Bye bye.